Ragnar Prime is approaching his first month of being officially released in Rise of Kingdoms, and today I'm going to be looking at a certain thing, Ragnar vs Scipio Africanus, who is going to be the best investment for you. If you're a new player, if you're an endgame player, no matter where you are, we're going to analyze both of the two options and decide, in my opinion, which commander is the best initial investment. So if you're interested in Scipio vs Ragnar, who is a better commander, you want to stick around to the end of the video. Also, I will mention why I have no hair in my head a little bit later. Quickly, I will just start off by mentioning why I've got no hair on my head, as you can see. I put this on my Discord and I think on a community post. I did do the world's greatest shave. It's like an Australian charity initiative where I shaved all my hair off to raise money for blood cancer. I'll be releasing a YouTube short of me getting all my hair shaved off. So if you guys do want to consider donating, I have a goal to reach about $1,000 donated. All the money goes straight to charity. The link to donate will be in the pinned comment and also in the description. So that's why I've got no hair in my head. I don't have any problems with my hair. It's just I shaved it off to help raise awareness for blood cancer and hopefully get a bit more funding for some research or people who are suffering from it. So if you want to donate to help stop blood cancer, it'll be very much appreciated. Anything you can give, link in the pinned comment and also in the description. Other than that, let's just start off by going over some Ragnar vs Scipio things. And we'll start off with kind of looking at what Scipio's strengths are and a little bit at what his weaknesses are. To start off, Scipio's first real good strength, he's got an amazing debuff. I mean, the debuff on Scipio's kit, the 30% health reduction for 3 seconds to 3 enemies, is up there with probably some of the strongest, if not the strongest in the game, in my opinion, just because it is ridiculously strong. It's easily a strength of his, but his damage is going to be a bit lackluster once we do look at Ragnar. Then again, his damage is decent, it's just not as good, but that debuff is amazing. Another thing Scipio really has going for him is just a lot of stats throughout his kit. He's got tons and tons of damage reductions, he's got good amounts of health, he's got a decent amount of attack, and okay amounts of march speed. So these are some really nice things to have in a commander's kit, which Scipio does have going for him. On top of this, he does have a shielding factor. We all do like a shield, especially when it's given to 3 allied troops. It's just going to be better for your murder ball. So again, that is another really good part of his kit. The fact that he's got some shielding available to your other commanders and himself is really nice. And on top of this, he's just got a fair amount of other damage in terms of just instant damage he can deal. So for example, whenever he launches a basic attack, 10% chance to deal additional damage, 500 to the target every 3 seconds, or every second for 3 seconds. It's 1500 extra additional damage to the one target he's hitting, which is a really, really good amount to have. Another really big key advantage with Scipio Africanus is he's got really broad pairings. I mean, you can slap Scipio with pretty much any infantry commander, and it's going to be an amazing march. I mean, even commanders like Harold, who are not really good commanders, put them with Scipio, they're barely usable. It's not going to be amazing, but it's going to be a fairly decent march. You can put commanders like Guan with Scipio. You can put commanders like Tarek, Sargon, even Liuche with Scipio. They're all really amazing pairings, and that makes him very versatile. It's something you really do want to see in a commander. So the fact that Scipio gets access to these very broad pairings is really, really good for him. It means he's got a lot more utility in a lot of situations with a variety of commanders, increasing, in my opinion, his early game value, his late game value, all that stuff can be good for you. So the earlier in Season of Conquest 2 or the later, he can have a lot more value there due to his just broad and open kit. There's not much in his kit that's reliant on a specific commander. He can pretty much be thrown with anyone and get a good trade. So that is good. It means he's got more future protection for future commander releases. It means that he's got more current versatility, and that overall is just going to make him a slightly stronger commander. Moving on to some disadvantages with Scipio Africanus, and the first key one I would say is the fact that he is starting to see a little bit of wear and tear compared to modern commanders. I mean, he's getting much older compared to a lot of pretty much every single modern commander in the game. I think he released in 2022 or early 2023. I think it was 2022. So Scipio, he's starting to show his age a bit. He's still good in the field, don't get me wrong, but Boudica and Nevsky have really started to show their age, and even though Scipio was the strongest of all three, he is eventually going to become a lot weaker. So his stats are a little bit behind. Generally, we see a bit more attack nowadays. Generally, we'd see around 30% health. Generally, the shielding factor would be slightly more. Not to say that he's bad and his stats aren't good. They're still very, very decent, but they are starting to fall like a little bit behind each new commander release, and overall it has slightly caught up with him. So this does mean he's going to lose a bit of value over time. He's not the strongest investment overall right now, but he is still a very good commander, so do keep that in mind. Even though he is technically an older commander, that is something that is pretty good about him. Another disadvantage though with Scipio is the fact that his talent trees are very meh. Infantry versatility support is not the best talent tree type, and he really wants to be a primary. If you're running Scipio, pretty much must be a primary, and I'm not a fan of the support tree. The reason I don't like the support tree, and I think a lot of people can agree with me on this, whenever you run a commander in the open field, you want fast active skills, and the support tree, it's a bit more of a you have to get ramped up tree, and Scipio doesn't really have any rage gain unless you're running Guan. So if you look right now at Henry with a skill tree or support tree, the main thing you've got is Rejuvenate here, which is going to let you gain 150 rage. You can usually just put 2 points in it. This is going to let you get a lot of rage. The problem is though, reaching your first active skill is going to take a lot longer than it normally would take. And I find that without the skill tree, I personally, this is a personal thing, I often struggle to get that active skill off within the right amount of time. So I'll just lose my rage or my Kamatra, get 2 damage before the active skill goes off, and it does make me lose a bit of value. Whereas with the skill tree, there's a lot more leniency about getting the commander's active skills. Feral Nature is really good, purely because it's going to allow you to get a massive amount of rage really quickly and let you get your active skill in a much shorter period of time. It's really nice to have. It can cut off 1 to 2 turns from your active skill, and then once you're ramped up, your Rejuvenate can pick up the rest. So that is really nice to have. Just keep in mind that it is one of those things where Scipio doesn't really have access to that, and when you run him, if you're not running him with Guan, you pretty much do want him to be a primary. Now, I almost always would run Scipio as a primary. The only time where you don't is when you have Guan Yu, because Guan's damage is really reliant on being a primary, but Scipio pretty much always needs to be a primary, and that's why his trees are very mid. The main reason he's a good primary is because of his active skill. The health reduction will let your secondary commanders deal more damage on their active skill. Otherwise, if you run him secondary, that health reduction doesn't really get wasted, but it doesn't get as much value as it could. So now that we've looked at the strengths and weaknesses of Scipio Africanus, what about the strengths and weaknesses of Ragnar? And we'll start off with a very quick strength. This is a really good one for a lot of people who are already in Season of Conquest. You got him for free. I mean, that's just a small little bonus to Ragnar. The fact you don't have to spend gems to get him, you do just get him for free, and every little bonus counts. Like with Scipio, the fact that he's got a lot of broad pairings is a small little bonus, but it does count. The fact that he's got shielding, small thing, but it does count. With Ragnar, the fact that you get him for free is a small thing, but it does count. And for a lot of people, you may have chose to spend a bit of money and get even more Ragnar sculptures, because some of the earlier tiers of his event were worth it. So Ragnar, you get in for free. That is a pretty nice small little bonus. Another good thing with Ragnar is he's got really good damage. I mean, he's got the 2,200 direct damage to 3 targets, and on top of this, he's got additional damage for every 2 seconds. It's 300, so 600 total additional damage to every target his active skill is going to hit. So you're going to deal 2,200 direct damage. That will be reduced by 15%, but then the further 600 to 3 different targets will not be reduced by 15%, at least the way that his skill is worded. So this means he's going to deal 600 damage to 3 more targets. It's another 1,800 damage factor on his active skill, which is really nice to have. It's essentially basically as if he hit 4 targets. Because there is no reduction, I think it would equal out to about 1,800 total damage, which is really nice. It's a very powerful active skill in terms of just raw damage he's going to be dealing, and in my opinion, it's probably like the 2nd or 3rd strongest in the game. It's only a little bit weaker than someone like Leo Chair, who's got a bigger AoE and he's got 5 targets, and it's only a little bit weaker than someone like Tulang, who's got a 5 target damage AoE as well. But it's a really good active skill. It's some of the best damage in the game, and it is really nice. Another good thing about Ragnar, he's a very modern commander. He's got a lot of good stats. I mean, his stats are pretty much up to date with some of the top stats that you can get access to, at least right now. I mean, he's not a fully stat-heavy commander, but he's got decent amounts. He's got 40% defense. That's really up to meta levels. He's got 10% march speed, plus he can gain 20% more, 30% more when he uses his drain ability, which I'll talk about soon. And he's also got a good amount of just debuffs throughout his kit. So he's going to be taking, or not debuffs, but he's going to be taking less normal damage, which is another meta stat to have, because he's got that access to deal with some of the new smite commanders, which is a very nice thing. And not to mention, normal damage is just nice. Anytime your opponents hit you, they're usually going to be dealing some form of a normal damage, a bonus, or attack. So I personally am quite a big fan of the normal damage reduction that he does have. Another good thing about Ragnar, he's got that draining ability. Now, this ability, it's a bit selective of when you can use it, but I do really like it for when you're chasing someone down. When you chase them down, you're pretty much going to drain their stats permanently. You're going to steal their attack and steal their march speed pretty much the whole time you're hitting them. Now, it is a 30% trigger chance. It's only going to last for 2 seconds, but realistically, you're going to pretty much drain this opponent the full amount of time. And when they lose their march speed, you gain march speed as well, so you're going to be able to catch up to people who are fleeing, which I do like. Now, if you're being hit, I don't think it's as good because you can't drain your opponent's stats, but it is a relatively nice thing to have access to, and it does give him a lot more open field viability, especially against a lot of commanders who are faster. So against cavalry, it really allows him to chase down those top-notch cav commanders, like Nevsky and Hao Bing, who are just stupidly fast. Ragnar can catch up to them, and obviously infantry are meant to beat cavalry, so it's a really, really nice ability to have, and again, it just is going to make him that touch bit stronger. Final good thing about Ragnar, he's got access to a better talent tree. He does have access to the skill tree, and for the same reasons that I spoke about before, in my opinion, it is a superior tree to have access. Ragnar is also not necessarily required to be a primary, but he can serve as a good primary purely because of the really powerful damage on his active skills. So if you want that good early instant damage, you run him as a primary, you'll get a very nice amount of trades. But keep in mind, he does have that better active skill tree, or that better just talent tree, to help him use his better active skills. So that is a very nice thing about Ragnar. He's got a bit more of a, I want to say, adaptable kit in that regard, where he's got good talents with a good active skill, and they kind of go hand in hand. In terms of some of the weaknesses of Ragnar, when we look at his kit, not much tankiness going on. The only thing he's really got going for him is that defense and that normal damage reduction, and for modern commanders, especially infantry commanders, that's kind of lackluster. I mean, Scipio Africanus, he's got up to a 50% all day or 30% all damage reduction whenever he takes an active skill damage, which he has a 50% chance to trigger. So it's quite common that he's going to trigger that 30% all damage reduction. He also has shielding. Scipio also has health bonuses. These things are going to make him much, much tankier, and that is very nice to have. So Scipio's really tanky kit definitely does outclass the tankiness in Ragnar's kit by a fairly good margin. Even though Ragnar does have a permanent or a normal damage reduction, which is nice, it is just kind of not enough to make up for the lack of tankiness throughout the rest of his kit, especially as an infantry commander. Now, this lack of tankiness does kind of limit his pairings, especially with a lot of modern commanders. I think that Ragnar is kind of hard to pair with a lot of commanders. His best pairing is, funny enough, Scipio, even though we are putting them against each other. But other than that, it's hard to find a very good pairing for him. You kind of want someone who's a bit tanky. So if you're new to Season of Conquest, you might have a Charles Martel. A pairing like that could be good for Ragnar, but it's a very, very difficult commander to work around, especially due to his very, very squishy kit. So Ragnar's squishy kit does definitely impact him a lot in terms of his pairings. It really makes him a very, very narrow and hard commander to run in that regard, which is something we're going to have to take into account when we consider who is going to be a better choice. So Ragnar, very, very niche pairings, definitely is going to impact him a lot, just because there are really few commanders who work really amazing with him. I mean, someone like Tarek is feasible with him, but because Tarek is also not the most tanky, it's another example of probably won't be the best pairing possible. Another possible issue with Ragnar is the fact that he doesn't really work with smite commanders either. I mean, Ragnar's very heavily on the skill damage side. He's got skill damage bonuses and reductions. That stuff is kind of good. I mean, the fact that obviously you get a skill damage reduction is nice overall, but the skill damage bonus, useless. Completely useless for any commander you run with him that has smite damage. The only thing it's going to do is boost himself. And Scipio himself doesn't actually have any skill damage reductions, which just makes him a bit more broad, a bit more usable with smite commanders. Not to mention some testing, and obviously people have run Ragnar with Leo Chair. Just not a good pairing at all. It doesn't really work. For some reason, the pairing just does not click, and that's how it works with some commanders. Some commanders, their pairings really click, and some commanders, their pairings just don't work at all. So Ragnar with Leo Chair, it's not a pairing, and it's not really something you can look at. So now that we've looked at the advantages and disadvantages of both commanders, what is my overall opinion on who's going to be a better first choice? Now, like usual with these videos, there's usually a split in between these commanders, but in my opinion, I think there's a relatively simple answer. Scipio is still a better first initial investment, and it's for two reasons. A, Scipio's best pairing right now is probably Ragnar, so if you want to run Ragnar, you need to get Scipio first. And the reason I just get Scipio first It's mainly because of the fact he's so much more broad. You can use Scipio with like any commander possible, and that's just really good to have as an early game player. You can run Scipio with Mehmed because Mehmed is not very tanky. Scipio is tanky. You can run Scipio with Honda. You could run him with YSG if you really needed. There's a lot of options you can run Scipio with, especially if you're new to Season of Conquest or really early into the game. If you already have a Scipio expertise, I mean, get Ragnar, but that's not the purpose of today's video. Scipio is just a very broad commander who works really well with a lot of high damage commanders. Not to mention he's got decent damage of his own. So in my opinion, it makes him overall more usable right now. Just not the best long-term investment due to his relatively new age. So Scipio, he's a good first choice in my opinion over Ragnar, purely because of how broad he is. Ragnar is very, very specific and narrow. You need to have a Scipio to run Ragnar, which can be a bit of a problem for a lot of people. The only time I'd consider getting Ragnar first, if you've got a really tanky or really high level Martel, like a 5-5, 1-5 or something close to that, and you've just hit Season 3 or Season of Conquest, Ragnar is a better choice. The only reason I say that is because he's going to work very well with these types of commanders. These commanders who are tanky without much damage, Ragnar will be a better choice than Scipio, purely because of his much higher damage, and then later on you can go get Scipio. So, in my opinion, Ragnar is a little bit of a strange commander to get as a first choice, which is why I wouldn't pick him up. Also, if you already have a Guan Yu, I would be getting a Scipio. If you already have a Sargon, though, personally, I would go and get a Ragnar. The reason is Sargon is somewhat tanky. I mean, he's got a good amount of tank in his kit. He's got his own shielding and stuff, which is just good. So he's going to work good with Ragnar if you do have a Sargon. And I'm pretty sure you have to run Sargon as the primary. So just running Sargon primary, Ragnar secondary, they've got the same talent trees. It's not a very big deal. It's going to give you a nice, powerful commander pairing. In my opinion, it's better than having a Scipio Sargon. I would rather have the Sargon primary, Ragnar secondary, because Sargon with Scipio, they kind of clash a little bit. Scipio wants to be a primary, Sargon also wants to be a primary. Sargon is inflicting that Ord debuff, which is going to make the target take more skill damage, and for that to work, he really needs to be a primary commander. Now, Sargon's not the best commander in the open field by any means, but if you do have one and you don't have a Scipio, maybe you invested in him as a rally for whatever reason, or you did just invest in him over Scipio, Ragnar is a very decent pairing with him, and I would be getting Ragnar to run with a Sargon before I got a Scipio to run with a Sargon. Now, that's a very niche situation, but overall, I think that Ragnar is the inferior first investment, or really first choice, just mainly because Scipio, much more broad commander, more diverse kit overall, he's got a lot more capabilities than Ragnar, and in my opinion, it does make a stronger march. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, I just want to ask you guys to consider donating to the world's greatest shave. Like I said at the start of the video, it is the reason that my hair is actually all gone today. I shaved it off for the charity event. My goal is $1,000. I think I've raised around $300 so far, which is really good. So if you guys can consider anything you donate helps, even $5, which I think might be the minimum they accept, please do consider donating. The link to donate, pinned comment, and also in the description. It helps people with cancer, which we all know is a very terrible disease, and it is the main reason I'm completely bald right now. So every dollar you donate goes straight to charity. It doesn't even go into my account, straight to the organization, who are a charitable organization. So if you want to make a donation, it is much appreciated. And really, if you just don't even donate to me, just donate to the group that I'm in, whatever it may be, it all goes straight to cancer research, which is really, really nice. And it's just a good way to make a little bit of a difference in the world. So if you want to donate, link will be in the pinned comment and also in the description. And it is much appreciated on my behalf, and also from many people around Australia and even around the globe, because all the research they do will obviously help people globally. Now, I just want to say I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.